The Loved Ones unsurprisingly is a movie that deals with the concept of love, while simultaneously teaching us the horrors of what can happen if you don't receive the belt enough as a child. Parental love, teenage love, a slightly different parental love, and a love for the weird zombie creatures that I keep in my basement. This one's named Jerry. But funnily enough, Jerry by far isn't the most disturbing and horrifying thing that this movie has to offer. That would be the location, Australia. The movie begins with a father and son driving through the Australian backroads, aka most of Australia, when all of a sudden someone doing their best attempt at a love heart sweet cosplay forgets his basic survival instincts and walks directly out into the road covered in blood with a heart carved into his chest. The car swerves, and once again my philosophy for why deforestation isn't such a bad idea after all is proven right as they collide head first into a tree and come closely acquainted with the taste of bark. It skips ahead 6 months and we see that the same kid named Brent is hanging out at school doing one of those illegal cigarette deals with his friend Jamie when suddenly he's approached by this girl named Lola, and by approached I mean she quite literally stands a few inches away from him, expelling all of her used lung air into his face before asking him to the school dance. But Brent, thinking her breath stinks like ass and happening to already be going with his girlfriend Holly, politely and respectfully declines her offer, or while being able to taste what she had for lunch. It then cuts to Brent making sure that all of Holly's internal organs are where they're supposed to be as she removes his t-shirt to reveal self-inflicted cuts up the side of his torso. But that just seems to make things better for Holly, as apparently she likes her men medium rare. All the while we see Lola standing outside of the car, evident that she's clearly never been told that it's rude to creepily stare at someone as they're having their rod bit shined, as she's recreating a real-world interpretation of most of us as we watch people go at it on the hub while just kind of awkwardly watching. Holly then drops Brent off at home. He kisses her on the lips and wonders why they taste extra salty today before she tells him that she loves him, and he just kind of ignores her as he's on that Sigma male grind set. There's a bit of tension between Brent and his mother after learning that Holly will be driving him to the dance due to the whole husband becoming closely acquainted with the tree thing, like really closely, and Brent doesn't take it so well before deciding that his best course of action right now is to take a short drop and a sudden stop from a nearby cliff, except it isn't. As he quickly changes his mind the moment his grasp slips and decides that he'd might rather make snow angels in the grass instead, and as he's sitting at the top of the cliff he suddenly approached from behind and given free drugs from a stranger just as he answers a call from his mother, and his mother, thinking that maybe he went through with the impromptu bungee jump, goes to look for him at his favorite cliff diving spot just as we see Holly arrive to pick him up for the dance. We then see Brent's friend Jamie going to pick up his date Mia from her home as he meets her father, a police officer who receives a call from Brent's mother about his disappearance, and we see Mia recreating in the face that every female ever looks at me with as she's being driven to the dance by Jamie, looking as she'd rather be quite literally anywhere but going to a school dance with Jamie. And we see that whoever's kidnapped Brent prefers the finer things in life, like roadkill, as they then arrive at a house with their average McDonald's ingredient in hand. The kidnappers are Lola and her father, because apparently some of their favorite pastimes and hobbies include kidnapping teenage boys for fun. We then See Lola in her bedroom as we get somewhat of an idea of her mental state. And perhaps mental age as we see her surrounded by Barbie doll stuffed toys and romanticized childlike drawings of a prince in a castle. Her dad then enters the room bringing her a brand new pair of shoes and a bright pink dress, just what every kidnapping high school girl with a proximity problem wants, and to set the tone for this already incredibly set tone between the pair, Lola proceeds to remove her clothes and get dressed in front of him as he makes this face. Because that's totally normal behavior. Brent eventually wakes up after being unconscious for a concerningly large amount of time with a healthy dose of probable brain damage, wondering if there's something on his face as he sees both Lola and her father staring directly at him. He finds himself restrained to a chair while dressed in a tux and turns his head to the right to see a woman who's clearly listened to too much tool as her third eye is opened in the center of her forehead while she blankly stares right through him. The father then holds Brent's head back as Lola fills up a syringe with blue liquid and injects the forbidden Gatorade directly into his neck. The substance has removed his ability to speak instead, leaving him only able to let out a harrowing strained scream. Lola and her father have decided that they're going to have their own school dance here and that Brent's going to be Lola's date. Whether he likes it or not, she seems a bit high maintenance. I'm not going to lie, a subplot that exists, I imagine, purely to break up some of this teenage love tension is the subplot between Mia and Jamie, in a stark juxtaposition as they spend most of the night getting baked and drinking straight out of the bottle in Jay's car. A short-lived break as it's right back into the action as we learn what a complete psycho Lola's dad is, as after finishing off a plate of chicken wings he decides to wash it back with a nice thick glass of milk. Terribly concerning behavior. And we see that Lola's clearly got somewhat of a jealousy issue, if not made evident enough due to the whole kidnapping the boy who rejected her thing, as we see the look of pure disgust on her face as she snaps a wishbone with her father and he gets the big piece, followed by her then asking her father who looks prettier, her or the grandmother that looks like she's just found her grandson's secret Xanax stash, and after the father replies, "You both look pretty," she begins to force chicken and milk into the woman's mouth. Because by God, she's going to enjoy this fancy cuisine. She then tries to give some to Brent, but as he refuses the strange woman's chicken, offering her father retrieves a hammer to intimidate him with, she then forces him to open his mouth and to taste some of this finger looking good grease off of her finger, which she seems to be enjoying entirely. Way too much, which apparently the father doesn't seem to like all that much. Because he wanted the grease, Brent then manages to mutter that he needs to use the toilet, so Lola downs her glass of milk, unzips his trousers and plops it into the milk glass. The dad tells him that he's got 10 seconds to go, otherwise he's going to receive an improvised Prince Albert piercing and have it forcefully nailed to the chair, and Brent, suffering from a severe case of performance anxiety, just manages to go. At the count of 9 he then sends Lola hilariously flying across the room for daring to mention Holly, because by all means sure kidnap, assault and threaten my pecker with a not so good time, but the second you mention my girlfriend's name, all my years of watching WWE are about to pay off. In the commotion he manages to break free from his restraints and hop away like some kind of horrifically disabled kangaroo, before hiding beneath the father's car as he searches for him using the razor blade that he carries on himself. He's able to free his legs moments before serving as a teenage boy-sized road bump, and with his youthful energy quickly scales a tree after being spotted, but Lola, having quite the knack for hitting boys in the head with rocks, lands her shot and Brent send tumbling out of the tree. They tie Brent back into the chair and give him a non-consensual piercing as they hammer kitchen knives into both of his feet. Because ear piercings are overrated, and after letting out a strained scream in pain, Lola tells him to cry, but Brent, suffering from pathological demand avoidance, defiantly stares her in the face and proceeds to in fact not cry, as he's repeatedly hammered, and not the good kind of repeatedly hammered. They then sit next to him as Lola shows him her scrapbook, as it contains many pictures of other kidnapped boys that they taken over the years ever since Lola was a small child, and both her and her father find it absolutely hilarious to recall that one time that this little boy wet himself at the end. She then shows him a picture of another boy, and her father simply neglected to retrieve Brent's razor blade since his last escape attempt, giving Brent the perfect opportunity to now break free and slice the dad across the face and introduce him to the big wild world of scarification. He cuts his legs free, pulls out both of the knives, and launches the drill at the dad's skull before repeatedly planting the dirty foot knife into his windpipe. Lola attempts to grab him from behind, but he throws her to the floor and repeatedly punches her in the face. Once he's done enacting this domestic, Brent then walks over to the dad and throws him into the hole to be devoured by his own starving creatures. Brent himself is then thrown into the hole after being distracted and getting grabbed from behind, realizing that her dad is dead and being given a second dose of questionable daddy issues. Lola gets up and closes the hatch, but luckily for Brent, he finds the hammer and torch that she conveniently threw at him in a rage just as the prisoners begin to corner him, leaving him forced to kill them all in a frantic flurry. Lola, feeling like a bit of a sore loser at this point, decides to take her anger out on the woman they call Bri Eyes. She heads over to her locked room and suffocates her with a pillow before proceeding to say goodnight, mommy. Because how dare she not eat all of her chicken earlier, after we see Jamie bring home an incredibly inebriated Mia. Holly suddenly remembers that Brent told her that Lola asked into the dance earlier, so she decides to call Mia's dad, a local police officer who we see also has a missing son, much like Brent's mother, who could very well be that boy who Brent dodged with his car back at the beginning of the movie, which I guess explains Mia's behavior throughout the entire movie, because if movies have taught us anything, it's that if teenage girls are grieving, they like to do drugs, get drunk and have sex. He arrives at the house and looks through the window to find the place covered in blood, and Brent hears him break in, so begins screeching and throwing things to get his attention, which works perhaps a little too well, as when he opens the hatch to see him, Lola appears from behind and plants a cleaver directly into his skull, sending him flying backward into the pit like some kind of unusually large humanoid raindrop or something, and Brent grabs his gun and fires all of the shots at her, missing every single one in the process, because Lola is wearing this nifty little device known as plot armor. So she tells him that because he killed her dad, she's going to head over to his house to kill his mom and then kill Holly. We see that despite there being two working vehicles on the property, she's going to walk through the Australian outback on foot, as we see Brent looking at a pile of bones and getting an idea Lola's walking down the road, when suddenly she hears a car coming from behind. It's Holly's car. So as Holly drives past, Lola launches her scrap work that she for some reason has brought along with her to conduct a double murder, causing her to come to a stop. Lola opens the door and plunges at Holly with a knife, but Holly kicks her in the face and takes off running as we see Brent creating a human pyramid out of humans. He reaches the top and pulls himself free before we see him take the police car and reach a speed of 140 miles per hour. Suddenly Holly appears in front of him, and much like the crash that killed his father, he swerves, but instead of killing his father again, he instead slams directly into Lola as if she was nothing more than a tiny little bug in the way of a speeding windshield. And despite driving at 140 miles per hour being enough to turn anyone into red mist, after the pair are reunited because of Brent's little trip away from home, we see that Lola is somehow still alive and crawling her way towards the car to get Holly, but Brent, not being the type of guy to leave a job unfinished, hits the car in reverse before quite literally hitting Lola again. Before we finish things up, I'd like to just give a big shout out to all YouTube members and patrons, the people who every month help keep this thing going, because we all know how finicky YouTube can be with copyright claims and demonetization, especially when you're covering content such as this. So once again, just a massive shout out to everybody who helps out to keep this channel afloat. So starting off with YouTube members, a big thank you to Lori Renz, Billy Bad Cables, Gary Brunk, Psycho Cobb, Red Beam, Excus, Mike Fix, Sands Gaming, Gobu, Julie Not 666, Arens, David Gannis Voller, Brian Walker, David Winter, Donovan Farrell, Mr. Def, Rooney 2135, Alexander Ruben Cardenas, Jacob Wenin, and Cal Ballinger. Heading over to Patreon, a massive thank you to Dom Hunters 263, Rebecca Pitts, Benz, Martin, Brandon, Natasha Tman, Jaredy B's, Pascal Mathis, Richard McGaw, I Third, Macy J. Chris, Dennis Jamendi, Ashley L. Wiz, Christopher Beauty, Joshua Torres, Remy Fire, Goes Fast, Josh Brooks, DM Robert Zach, Dark Shiva, Josh Hannon, Billy Whitaker, Jay Slows, Daniel Dickinson, Goss Fatty, Ghost, Miguel Owen, Mackenzie, Riley Bryson, John Smith, Madrick, Liu, Stephen Weber, Shanning Mars, Michael Ataker, Benjamin Bronson, Paul Bartlett, Reese Hinrich, Toasty, Todd 1, Nazan, Todd Benedict, Garam, FX666, AJ Castro, Robbie Walk, Nate Law, Alex FW, Sky, Ethan Holmes, DeAndre Fernandez, Cal Ballinger, Mitch Brandman, Blue Brothers Averages 2, Augustina Cedric, Spear Salon, Rios, Matthias Jensen, Sergey Maslowski, John Adano, Clota Fake, Tom Jones, Kevin Basement, Giovanni Monano, Patrick Ferrara, Jono, Dave McDade, Skeleton Bone, Lord Kevin, Zest, Madison B. Joe, David Kavanaugh, and Billy Clip Pod. So once again, a massive thank you to all YouTube members and patrons, and a huge thank you to everyone else for watching.